Welcome into Jungle Tales, a Pirate Baseball podcast. On deck for East Carolina this weekend is a trip out to Wichita and X Stadium to take on the Wichita State Shockers. And right now, to preview that matchup between the Pirates and Shockers, very excited to be rejoined by their longtime play-by-play voice, Mike Kennedy. Mike, welcome back.
Thank you, Bubba. Good to be back.
Yes, sir. Taking a look at this series, which will be, these are Eastern times now, 7 p.m., 3 p.m., and 2 p.m. on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But let's get an overview of the Shockers. Like we were just discussing off the air, very surprised at the 13-30 overall record and 5-13 in the American. Wichita State really had an excellent finish to 2024, 32-29, a run to the title game where you lost that heartbreaker to Tulane. But just give us the Cliff Notes version of how we are where we are.
Well, it's really a combination of a lot of things. There have been some key injuries. Wichita State lost a young man named Owen Washburn, who would probably be their three-hole hitter and a key defender, either at second base or in the outfield, to transfer from Texas Tech. To a couple of hamstring injuries. He's only played in like 2 games all year. And then there have been some other injuries off and on that have kept guys out for significant stretches. And then I don't know. I think things just start snowballing in the wrong direction, and guys lose confidence, start pressing. There have been a lot of just bizarre occurrences, just strange things that have happened to cost the team ball games, and so it's really hard to encapsulate to any great extent. But that's certainly a starting place, I guess.
Yeah, we as Pirate fans can certainly relate to a lot of those things that you just mentioned. We've certainly had our share of injuries and definitely inconsistencies at one point or another in all 3 phases of the game. East Carolina, of course, 25-19, 10-8 in the American. And, looking at things for the Shockers, you do have a Tuesday night game against Oklahoma, and the Sooners are ranked, and this game is in Norman. And on Saturday, you were able to snap a 9-game skid with a 7-5 victory over South Florida.
Yeah, I don't know about the Oklahoma game. That one may get rained out, which might not be a bad thing. Right now, this team just needs to regroup a little bit, and they're trying to really get some things figured out with the pitching rotation. The biggest problem has been there's hardly been anyone that has been consistent enough that they feel like they can pretty consistently trust or know what role to put them in. Somebody will look really good for a couple of appearances, and then just out of nowhere, it goes away. And so that's been a big issue. The other thing, offensively, this team has trouble scoring runs because they don't hit home runs and they don't steal bases. They've hit a few more home runs in the league. It's been about 1 a game in the league, but for the whole season, 28 in 43 games. And so they're having to put a lot of singles together to score runs. And you know how tough that is. And on the flip side, the pitching staff's just walked way too many. And so you give up a double or a home run, and it's 3 runs instead of maybe 1. So uh, that's really been the big thing. I thought maybe snapping the losing streak would be a kickstart in the right direction, and then they gave up a 6-run third inning on Sunday to South Florida, and that game was out the door before we even got started.
East Carolina has hit probably 45 to 50 home runs, just going off the top of my head here. But at the same time, the Pirates have not produced an abundance of doubles, which has required, if we're not hitting the long ball, of course, Cliff Godwin and staff, they love the short game as it is, but they've had to turn to that and manufacturing runs even more so than in the past because of not having some of those extra base hits. But taking a look at this lineup, you have Camden Johnson leading the way with his 341 average. And then he's also second on the team with 13 doubles.
He has been, I would think, maybe easily the most consistent player in the lineup all year. I mean, he's kept right around the same numbers all season. He's been 340 to 355 pretty much all season. He's got some gap type power, with the 13 doubles. He runs well and great competitor. I mean, he's just a really good all around player. So, I mean, he's been one of the real bright lights for this team's built on a good freshman year into a really good sophomore year.
The team's top slugger, Josh Livingston, hitting just a shade below 300, 296 to be exact, 12 bombs, and a team high 35 runs batted in as well.
You know, he's the guy that at this time last year was almost an unknown. He was hardly playing. It was almost at exactly this time last year that he came off the bench and hit a big grand slam at UTSA to help the team sweep a doubleheader there after they'd lost a heartbreaker in the first game of the series. And then he just kind of built on it from there. Had a great postseason tournament. And so he ended up being preseason all conference this year. And he's by and large done a great job all year long. He's had to make some adjustments because last year, nobody knew who he was. This year, he's one of the guys that everybody looks at in the Wichita State lineup. And so, you know, the scouting reports are out there. He's had to adjust to seeing a lot of off speed stuff and breaking balls and not getting many fastballs to hit, but he's really done a pretty good job with it.
Other names: Cam Durnan, Jordan Rogers, as well as a few others. Talk about some of those guys and their productivity.
Cam Durnan last year as a freshman, I think started the year something like 7 for 61 and then hit over 300 the last half of the season, had a really good finish. He had off-season elbow surgery. And at the beginning, they weren't even sure coming into the season if he was going to be able to play at all. It turned out that he healed enough he could DH for the first 15 or 20 games, and then the elbow got strong enough he could throw. He started playing shortstop again, but he got off to a slow start with the bat again this year, and he's hitting well over 400 over the last 11, 12 games. Has brought his average up to 296. Just hit his second home run over the weekend. He ended up the season with 7 last year, but he's really starting to make solid contact consistently, and so that's been a plus. You mentioned Jordan Rogers. He's been a little more up and down than he was last year, but he's hitting 320 something over his last 12 games, and he's had 4 of his 6 home runs in like the last 10 or 11 games. So he's started to pick it up. He's a senior who's kind of seeing the end of the thing, and I think's really trying to put on a strong finish. Mauricio Millan, I think everybody knows he's been outstanding. He's a great leader, great teammate, and pretty consistent. 301, doesn't hit with power, but consistent hitter, really good defensive catcher. I mean, those are some of the guys that they've really been able to count on most of the time anyway. Jaden Gustafson was one of the team's hottest hitters for about a month, 3 weeks to a month. And then all of a sudden he's like 3 for his last 30. And that's just, you know, that's been part of it too, is some of those kinds of ups and downs and slumps and so forth. So they keep scrambling, looking, trying to put lineups together that give them some defense on the right side of the infield, but also are competitive offensively. And sometimes that just depends on matchups game to game. Which guy's throwing for the other team and who do they need to have in there?
You've already referenced some of the issues on the mound with regards to command. Um, Team ERA 689. Brady Hamilton and Grant Adler have been consistent starters throughout the season with, I think, 12 and 11 starts respectively. Tell us about Hamilton and Adler.
Adler came in from junior college 2 years ago to Wichita State and was the newcomer pitcher of the year in the conference. Had an ERA in the 2.5 range, really had an outstanding season. Last year transferred to Kansas and then got hurt. And I think only pitched in like 2 games there, transferred back. And through his first 7 starts, 5 of them had been really, really good. Had an ERA of like 1.6 for those 5 starts. And then the last 4, he has struggled in all of them. Just really uncharacteristic for him. And that's been that's been a tough thing because he's been the Friday guy. And this league has a lot of good Friday guys. And so even when he's off a little bit, it puts them in a hole early. And they're really trying to get him figured out. Brady Hamilton finished the year strong last year as a freshman. He was in a bunch of roles. He was in kind of middle relief at times. He made a couple of midweek starts, and then he pitched his way into the rotation at the end of the year. Had a really good game against the Pirates in the postseason tournament that helped get the Shockers to the championship round. And so he came into the season as the Friday guy, got off to a pretty good start in his first three starts, and then just lost his command for a while, was really struggling. He's really come back. The last four starts, he's been more like what they expected him to be. This last Saturday, he went 7 2/3 to beat South Florida, gave up, I think, 4 hits and 3 runs, and a couple of those were kind of cheap, and 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. So he seems to be getting back to what they thought he would be, and that's going to be a real key to how they finish the season, if they're going to be able to count on him and if they're going to be able to get Grant Adler, who you mentioned, back to what he's capable of being.
In addition to Hamilton and Adler, tell us how the Shockers, Brian Green and staff, have approached that third starter, and then also, who's some of the top middle relief and then also short relief options have been out of that bullpen.
Well, the third starter's really been kind of an up and down thing. They started out the year with Jace Miner, and people who follow the conference may remember him. He was a second team all conference pitcher for Wichita State 2 years ago, kind of a more of a setup guy, mostly a middle relief guy. And then he went to Oklahoma last year, went through the portal, had an okay year, decided to transfer back, and they thought, well, his experience and competitiveness, they would try him in the rotation, and he was kind of up and down. So they pulled him out of the rotation. He's been back to more of a middle relief role. Aaron Arnold is a guy that they got from Crowder Community College who has a really good arm and was coming off of Tommy John. And so early on, they didn't want to press him too much, throw too many innings. So he was coming out of the bullpen. They moved him to the starting rotation, and he's actually been pretty good in that role, but he's still not capable of going more than four, maybe five. And so they decided this last weekend to move him back to the pen, be able to bring him in at any time. He might end up being the closer, might end up being their most dependable guy. And he throws 95 to 97 with a good breaking ball and is really, really capable. And then after that, it's hard to say. Jeremiah Arnett's a sophomore who had a pretty good finish to his freshman year. He's come into some really tough situations and gotten out of it, but then he's also had some games. He's a strike thrower. He's one of the few on the staff, but he's not overpowering. So occasionally he'll throw strikes that are a little too good in the middle of the plate and get hit a little bit. He just had a tremendous outing against South Florida on Friday. Went 4 1/3 shutout. Only gave up a couple of hits, didn't walk anybody, and he said he's been working on some stuff that he feels like's really starting to kick in. So you might see him as a weekend starter the rest of the way, or certainly a key guy. Um, After that, Tyler Dobbs had a pretty good, solid freshman year last year. A left-hander who was a freshman last year, finished with like a 4.65 ERA, and he's at 7.71 right now. He'll have a couple of good innings, and he'll have that one real bad inning, and I could name more names for you, but those are kind of the guys. That's kind of the example. They have a young man named Nick Potter, who is another Crowder College transfer. He came into the Kansas State game last Tuesday, and they had cut the lead to 11-7. So I mean, it's still not likely in the seventh that they're going to win, but at least they're kind of there. And K-State gets their first two guys on in the seventh. They bring him out of the pen. He struck out three straight guys on 12 pitches, throwing 97 to 99, and it just looked like a big time major league closer. He comes out to start the next inning. Now it's 11-8, walks the first guy on four pitches, none of which were close, then goes double home run, and the game's over. And it's hard to explain. I mean, they have another young man named Carson Richard, also from Crowder College, who throws 93 to 95 with a good breaking ball when he can get it in the strike zone. But he's walked 21 in 13 2/3 innings. And so, there's talent there. There's guys that are capable, but just right now, not any idea of knowing what you're going to get.
Yeah, we as Pirate fans, like I've said a couple times throughout this interview, can definitely relate to some of the things that you're saying, where you'll see one guy looks stellar, and then the next time out, instead of going 5 or 6, 7 innings, he'll go 2/3 of an inning and give up 5 or 6 runs and 2 or 3 home runs. It's tough to figure, but just the lack of consistency there. A couple more things for you, Mike. I see the team has a fielding percentage of 968. What can you tell us about the Shockers when it comes to the glove?
That has gotten better. I think in conference it's 974, which is up among the leaders, or maybe even a little better than that. I was noticing everybody almost is fielding pretty well in the conference. South Florida was at 972, I think, in the league, and that was eighth for league games only. So Wichita State has fielded better lately in terms of not making errors. I've mentioned that in order to get a couple of hitters in the lineup that they need, they lack some range on the right side of the infield sometimes, so they're trying to counteract that by trying some different guys and different combinations to still match up offensively, but be able to get to more balls on the right side of the infield. Other than that, it's been pretty solid. They won't make a lot of spectacular plays, but pretty much will make all the routine plays, except like I say, on that right side of the infield.
Final question for you, kind of a two-parter or multi-parter here. Looking at the American as a whole, East Carolina has yet to play UTSA, which the Roadrunners will come to Greenville next weekend, and then you also have a trip to close the regular season down to Tampa prior to the tournament over in Clearwater against the South Florida Bulls in that final series of the regular season. You have faced both of those clubs. So tell us first about UTSA, and then also on what you saw out of USF under, a highly successful coach, even though it's his first year there in Tampa in Mitch Hanna's.
UTSA is really, really good, especially offensively. I would say their pitching is good, not going to blow you away, but man, they can hit. And they remind me a lot. I think you would liken them to some of the best teams you've had there at ECU offensively. And it was interesting watching them taking batting practice. They hit line drives and hard ground balls. You don't see anybody elevating the ball, but when they get in games and when they make good contact, they can hit it out of the park. But they're very disciplined. A lot of threats in the lineup. I think Mason Lytle, their center fielder, he was the preseason player of the year. I think he's probably that. He's really good, not only offensively, but goes and gets everything in center field. They're just a really, really good team. I mean, they're a team that could go a ways in the postseason. South Florida, I think, has done a lot with what they were able to do. And we know Mitch Hanna's going way back. He was an outstanding player at Indiana State, even before he was the head coach there later in his career. And I think he'll do a great job there. I would say, we felt like in the years we've been in this league, which is 8 now, that South Florida's always had some of the best talent in the league and never seemed to get quite as much out of it as maybe they should have. I feel like now it's a little bit the other way. Maybe they're not quite as talented, quite as athletic as they've been, but he's doing a good job of getting a lot out of them. They have a guy named Jack Nedrow, a pitcher who is a transfer from Division II Lee University in Tennessee. He pitched the Sunday game and was 92 to 94 with a good breaking ball, and he doesn't walk anybody. And he's passed he's like around 33 innings in conference play now, and has walked 3 in 33 innings and can strike people out. So they've done a good job of picking up some people through the portal that have helped them, and they're a good solid team. Um, I don't rank them up there. They're in second place. I think we've seen a couple of other teams. Charlotte's really good. Um, I don't know that they just have impressed me quite as much as a couple of other teams we've seen, but they're just a really good, solid team, and they're going to be tough to deal with.
Mike, as always, we appreciate 20 minutes of your time. Great information, and we really appreciate it. Tell folks how they can follow you on social media, and then also, if Pirate fans may be listening to a few innings or would like to listen to a few innings of your description of things this weekend out in Wichita, how they can do so.
Well, I don't, I don't really do much on social media, so there's not much to follow there. But you can pick us up on GoShockers.com if they'd like to listen to some of the broadcasts. It's got a link there to take you to the radio broadcast.
Again, we appreciate the visit, Pirate Nation. That is the longtime play-by-play voice of the Wichita State Shockers, Mike Kennedy. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Be sure to follow us on social media at Jungle Tales Pod on X and Instagram, and like, comment, and subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. But that will do it for this edition of On Deck. We'll catch you on Sunday night as we recap the week that was, a midweek date with Elon, and then 3 with the Wichita State Shockers and former East Carolina pitcher, John White will join me to do so. But that will do it for this edition of the show. We'll talk to you soon. And as always, go Pirates.